In 1923, a loaf of bread in Berlin cost 200 billion marks. A farmer 20 miles outside the city sold that same loaf for a single egg. The banker, the university professor, the civil servant, they lost everything. The farmer did not. Not because he was lucky, because he held something the monetary policy of the Weimar Republic could not touch. This is Economic Historian, where we decode the financial decisions that quietly shape the world you live in today. 6 assets preserved wealth during every recorded monetary collapse in modern history. Not some of them, not most of them. The same 6, appearing across Weimar, Germany, Argentina's 2001 implosion, the Great Depression, and the slow-motion fall of the Roman denarius. The central bank cannot print them, inflation cannot dissolve them. And the people who held them did not merely survive. They acquired assets from those who didn't, at fractions of their real value. In the next 9 minutes, 1. The mechanism behind every monetary collapse. Because understanding the economic architecture is the only way to understand which assets it cannot reach. 2. The 6 specific assets ranked by historical survival rate, with names and numbers that prove it. 3. And this is the part that almost never gets discussed. The one asset on this list that institutional advisors are structurally incentivized to steer you away from, and exactly why. Every currency detached from a fixed supply constraint has followed the same trajectory. This is not a pattern. It is a law. A government faces a fiscal gap, spending it cannot fund through taxation without political collapse. It instructs its central bank to monetize the deficit. New currency is issued. Existing currency is diluted. Prices rise. Savings erode. Debt denominated in the now cheaper currency becomes easier to service. The government's real debt burden falls. Every household's real savings balance falls with it. Asset devaluation for savers. Relief for the sovereign. This is not a failure of monetary policy. It is monetary policy functioning precisely as designed, just not for the people holding the currency. Rome debased the denarius 17 times between 64 AD and 268 AD. Each debasement transferred purchasing power from savers to the state. When the denarius finally collapsed in the 3rd century, the Roman economy retreated toward barter within a generation. The people who survived that transition held land, grain, and physical metal. The people who held the currency held nothing now. The 6 assets. The first is physical gold. Not gold ETFs, not futures contracts. Physical gold. In every documented financial crisis severe enough to destroy currency legitimacy, Weimar Germany, 1921 to 1923. Hungary, 1946. Zimbabwe, 2008. Argentina, 2001. Gold held or increased its purchasing power while domestic currency lost between 90% and 100% of its value. In Germany, 1 gold mark in 1918 was worth 1 trillion paper marks by November 1923. The people who held gold did not merely preserve wealth accumulation. They purchased factories, apartment buildings, and agricultural estates from those who had held paper. That transfer is documented in the Reichsbank records. It is not speculation. It is arithmetic. The second is agricultural land. Productive land, land that generates food, cannot be debased. A central bank cannot issue more farmland. In every financial crisis severe enough to threaten currency legitimacy, food-producing land held its value in real goods when it held nothing in nominal currency. During the Great Depression, while 9,000 American banks failed between 1930 and 1933, and the Dow Jones lost 89% of its value, Midwestern agricultural land retained its productive output. The farmer could still eat. More critically, the farmer could still set the terms of trade. The third is foreign hard currency held outside the domestic banking system. This is not an investment strategy. 'Tis a structural hedge against sovereign default. In Argentina's 2001 crisis, when the peso lost 75% of its value in 12 months, Argentinians who held US dollars in foreign accounts preserved their wealth entirely. Those who held pesos in domestic accounts faced the corralito. The government froze every account in the country simultaneously. Institutional trust in the domestic system had already been spent before the announcement was made. The accounts that survived were the ones the collapsing system could not physically reach. The fourth is commodities, specifically energy and food, not commodity funds. Physical commodities or direct access to them. Oil, stored grain, supply held outside financialist markets. In every economic depression severe enough to disrupt supply chains, the people who controlled physical commodities controlled the terms of exchange. The mechanism is direct. When debt instruments denominated in collapsing currency lose function as a store of value, the economy reverts toward barter. In that frame, a barrel of oil in Weimar Germany did not cost 200 billion marks. It cost, however, many marks a barrel of oil was worth, which meant it was priced in other real things. Whoever held real things held leverage. But here is what almost no economic historian mentions. The research on wealth preservation and monetary collapses consistently points to a single variable that matters more than asset selection: jurisdictional separation. The asset has to exist outside the system that is failing. Gold in a bank vault is subject to confiscation. Roosevelt did exactly that in 1933, issuing Executive Order 6102, which required American citizens to surrender their gold to the Federal Reserve at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce. 6 months later, the government revalued gold to $35. The confiscation had transferred the revaluation gain from private holders to the state. The evidence for this has been in public records for 90 years. The fifth is equity in essential. Monopolistic businesses, utilities, water, waste management, food distribution. These businesses do not lose their customers during a depression. People stop buying discretionary goods. They do not stop needing electricity and water. During the 1929 to 1933 contraction, while the broader market lost 89%, utility stocks retained between 40% and 60% of their nominal value and recovered fully within 5 years. The economic architecture of essential services creates a demand floor that no discretionary business possesses. The sixth is short-duration government bonds issued by fiscally solvent foreign sovereigns, not domestic bonds. Swiss Confederation paper, Norwegian government instruments. Sovereigns carrying low debt-to-GDP ratios, commodity-backed revenue streams, and no history of default. The logic is mechanical. During a domestic financial crisis, your own government's debt instrument is denominated in the currency being destroyed. A foreign sovereign's bond, if that nation's monetary policy has maintained genuine discipline, holds value. Precisely because it is structurally external to the collapsing system. Consider what these 6 assets share across 3 distinct historical moments. In Weimar Germany, gold holders used a collapsing currency to acquire factories at prices that would never exist again. Hard assets absorbed the monetary inflation, while paper instruments distributed it to whoever was still holding them. In Argentina, those with offshore dollar accounts survived the corralito untouched, because jurisdictional separation had placed their wealth beyond the reach of a sovereign in the act of defaulting. And in Rome's 3rd century collapse, landholders and grain merchants emerged as the new economic architecture, because food and energy carry a demand floor that no currency, however authorized, ever does. Different centuries, different instruments, different governments. The pattern beneath all 3 is identical. The transfer runs from those who held the claim to those who held the thing. Today, this same architecture operates across every major economy simultaneously. The Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet from $900 billion in 2008 to over $7 trillion by 2024. The European Central Bank followed the identical trajectory. Global wealth accumulation has bifurcated along a single fault line. Assets that benefit from monetary expansion have appreciated. Assets that require earned income to acquire have inflated beyond wage growth. The mechanisms are not new. The scale is the asset, with the highest documented wealth preservation rate across every monetary. Collapse in the last 2 centuries also generates zero-fee revenue for financial institutions. Physical gold held outside the banking system produces no management fee, no custody commission, no ongoing advisory relationship, no assets under management. The institutional investment strategy built on managed funds, bond portfolios, and diversified paper instruments is not necessarily wrong. But the structural incentive to recommend those instruments rather than the simpler answer exists whether or not any individual advisor is conscious of it. Systems that privatize fee generation while distributing monetary risk follow this same logic with remarkable consistency across 4 centuries. The tools changed. The logic did not. Every documented monetary collapse followed the same sequence: fiscal stress, monetization, debasement, asset transfer. The transfer always flows in one direction from those who held the currency to those who held the things the currency was supposed to represent. That asymmetry is not an accident. It is the economic architecture of collapse, operating exactly as it always has. This pattern has appeared in documented form at least 31 times since 1800. Right now, sovereign debt levels, central bank balance sheet expansion, and measurable declines in institutional trust in reserve currencies suggest the conditions are not receding. Next, I will show you how the Bank of England's founding in 1694 created the precise debt architecture that every modern central bank now operates inside, and why that original blueprint explains more about your current cost of living than any monetary policy speech delivered in the last decade. Because the founding document is the only framework that makes the present structure fully legible before it moves. If understanding the mechanism before it completes its cycle matters to you, the next video is the one to watch.